Recently, Perun Airsoft, the maker of many Airsoft MOSFETs, sent me this Cyma CM006 with their version 2 Hybrid Pro MOSFET inside, as well as their clicker trigger system. And they sent me this to have a go with, and I've used Perun MOSFETs a couple of times before. My Bolt AK has their tiny little MOSFET inside, and it just works. And something that just works can go a long way. Something you don't have to even think about. You just put it in, forget about it, you don't even know it's there. That's always a good sign. And this Cyma, as I mentioned, has the Hybrid Pro in it, which gives you options for precocking, active braking, battery protection, burst fire, trigger sensitivity, and a few other bits and bobs. And so far I'm getting on with it pretty damn well. I've set the precocking to a moderate amount on semi-automatic, which just makes it a little bit snappier, and the full auto I've actually programmed to be a 3-round burst. I do have a bit of a soft spot for burst fire. It really helps conserve ammo, and I also found that it seems to punch through foliage quite nicely.
Carrier is down.
The only thing I don't like about Perun MOSFETs, right, and this one is no exception, the way you program these things is through the selector and the trigger. You sort of communicate with it via moving the selector around, pulling the trigger a certain number of times. I find that a bit difficult, a bit tricky. There's a knack to it, and so it's not as easy to program compared to the Bluetooth MOSFETs out there, like the Kestrel that I looked at a while back, or the Titans, or that sort of thing. Now, I've had this problem with other Perun MOSFETs. I put a MOSFET into a mate's gun, which was a Perun. I can't remember what it was, but I can tell you that for one thing, it had the same programming system, which uses colors. And for those who don't know, I am colourblind, and I've got a list written here on my phone of the different colour blindness issues I have. Dark browns, dark reds, dark greens, blue and purple, pink and purple. Purple's a real bastard of a colour. It's awful, shouldn't exist. If you're going to take anything away from Fulcrum, purple should just be bloody banned. Yeah, lime green and orange, that's an interesting one. Lime green and orange pencils at school, always struggled with them. Bright green and yellow sometimes, you know, the really light yellowish greens, you know, they just look yellow to me. Light grey and pink, so sort of a silvery light grey and sort of like, well, a pink colour. Yep, you get the point. I can actually see the LEDs, which when you are programming it, I'm not going to plug it in right now to program it because I'm a bit scared I will knock the settings out, but it actually illuminates out the side of the gearbox, so you can actually see the colour projected against the inside of the magwell. Now, whilst I can somewhat distinguish between the LED colours, alright, the issue is for me is actually matching them up with the legend on the flowchart here. For example, the 2-stage trigger one, I didn't realise actually flashed 2 different colours. To me, if it wasn't for that line down the middle, I would not be able to distinguish the fact that there's 2 different colours. And whilst I do struggle with that, I'm not going to be too harsh about it, because colourblind people, we're a very, quite a minority. Not only that, you don't get the same colour blindness across all people. So this MOSFET's not something that I will be adjusting on the field, and I really like the burst fire. I've not set any sort of active braking though. I've left that alone because active braking can add additional stress to the gearbox by slamming everything to a halt. I might have not enabled the LiPo alarm properly because I'm pretty sure it didn't give me any warning, or at least I didn't notice it at the time. I very, very, very rarely run batteries down in guns now because I usually charge up during lunchtime. The trigger sensitivity, I had to crank it all the way up for the clicker to be detected by it. Now, speaking of the clicker, finally, this is a mechanical sort of simulator system which adds a clicking sensation to the trigger, and this is intended to be a bit more realistic because you've got the sort of the simulation of the sears inside. A lot of AEGs, normally you just pull the trigger and they just slide back and forth. The stroke can depend on what's been done to it. And if I remember correctly, you can adjust the clicker. The problem is it's a bit hard to adjust because you've got to take the whole thing apart. So I've just left it alone, and I like it. I think it's pretty bloody good. I'm actually considering looking at getting one of these for my AK. And it's just another little thing that makes an airsoft gun a little bit more unique and a little bit more realistic. The only thing I don't like about the clicker is it seems that it requires the removal of the physical safety. You may have noticed I've been pulling this whilst it's on safe, and it does the same thing on the other 2 fire modes. And whilst the MOSFET inside still has the electronic safety, which will ignore the trigger pulls if it's set to safe, I would prefer a physical block because it means it just gives you that bit of extra reassurance that the trigger physically cannot move. Now, one thing that did occur with this MOSFET and it's a potential, I don't know, timing issue. It might have been something that I've done, because I did actually take this apart, because this came from Spokane. The orange tip was a bastard to get off as well, but it was hot out the box. It was doing about 3/17, so I took the spring out, cut a couple of coils off. But whenever I first use this, I find that on semi-automatic it fires twice, until I put it onto burst fire and fire a burst, and then it's firing one shot, no problem.
For some reason, occasionally I'm getting a, it's usually after I've just taken it out the bag and plugged it in and all that, I am getting a bit of a burst on the semi-auto. Not completely sure what's going on there, because it doesn't sound like it was doing the 3-round burst, because it wasn't as well metered. Either it's a bit of overspin, I don't know. To be fair, it was working fine out the box, and then when I went and fiddled with the settings, had to factory reset it and go from there. So that most likely is something on my end.
It's a minor thing. It corrects itself. You put it on burst fire, it then learns, and then you can go on with your day and just put it into semi-auto. Now, one feature that gets bonus points for is that whenever you're using an airsoft gun, it's always good to try and make sure that the piston is relaxed at the end of the day before you put it away. And with the MOSFET inside, you can of course have precocking set, as I mentioned earlier. Now, precocking is basically where the piston, rather than starting off in the relaxed state, is wound back and held in a cocked position. So when you pull the trigger, all it has to do is just release it and then quickly wind it back to reset it. And what you can do is, if you hold the trigger down on semi-automatic, it will obviously fire one shot, and if you keep holding it, after a while it beeps rapidly and then it decompresses. You can hear the piston then going dunk and firing all the way forward, and it relaxes.
Come on, there we are.
And it's always a good thing to try and relax your piston, because it then means you're not putting the spring under any stress. The clicker's not giving me any problems. I really like it, although I don't like the lack of a physical safety. And with the Hybrid Pro, as mentioned before, it just works. I turn up for the day, have a good shootout with mates, then I go home. And even in the heavy rain we've had recently, the Hybrid Pro and the clicker, they didn't complain, they just got on with it. I will be reviewing this base gun at some point, but so far I am getting on very well with it, and I'm looking forward to using this build more. And as I mentioned earlier, this is now the backup gun, and a hell of a backup gun too. Not going to be using it for a bit though, because for the next event we've got the World War II event, August 17th, Commander Elite. Make sure you get down there. And I stupidly didn't bring them to the bench with me, but I'm going to be donating a couple of Mark II Pineapple meteorites with the pin-only fuses to their raffle. Make sure you get yourself down to that event. The weather's going to be really good. We've got a bit of a heat wave coming, but I've seen it's going to be about 23 to 26 degrees on the day. Get your asses down to there. We only had 10 people at the last event. I want to see more than 10 people at this bloody World War II event. If you like this video, found it helpful, then please make sure you leave a like. Big thank you to Perun for sending me this to try out. Make sure you leave any questions down in the comments. And if you want to support what I do, then make sure you check out fulcrumairsoft.com and Fulcrum Airsoft on Cults 3D. Massive thank you as usual for all of the support. And if you want to be part of the channel, then make sure you subscribe too. And if you want to see this build in action, you can check out this video right here, where we were playing in just what felt like a monsoon.